Will President Donald J. Trump succeed in his self embraced, self appointed role as the agent of destiny that will make America great again? What do you think? Welcome, Swagatham. No one needs to doubt Trump's intentions. His intentions are not in the realm of speculation. Fortunately, he is someone who doesn't believe in playing his cards close to his chest. It's out in the open, and therefore there is no need to speculate. He has stated upfront what he wants to achieve. He wants to make America great again. And his idea of making America great again is clearly making America the unrivaled, unmatched economic powerhouse of the world, number one. Number two, sustaining and, if possible, increasing the military might of America and therefore its control over the globe. So, the total domination of the world by America in the two aspects that matter most. One is wealth, and the other is security. This is not the occasion for me to go into specifics and details, and these details are very much in the open, and what is obvious need not be stated. The question that perhaps we need to ask ourselves is, it's all right for a man to have good and glorious intentions, but would he succeed? Here, I'm sure President Trump has a certain sense of history, and therefore he will also know that very rarely does it happen in history that a man ventures on a gigantic project, virtually trying to play God to the rest of the world, and succeeds in his project. Think of Napoleon, who was certainly a far greater genius than President Trump would ever be. I would say he is 1,000 times greater genius. He was 1,000 times greater genius than Trump can ever aspire to be. But he ended up in St. Helena. The man who wanted to control the whole world met his destiny alone in an island. Similar was the plight of Hitler. It's closer to our times, therefore, I need not describe the melodramatic death of Hitler in a Berlin bunker. So, history has a peculiar way of cutting to size the overweening ambitions of human beings. This is found even in mythology. In mythology, you have a character called Icarus. He wanted to ascend to the sun, and he wanted to drive the chariot of the sun. Not Icarus, Phaeston. And we know what Holocaust it created. And then there is the story of Icarus, who wanted to assume wings and fly to the sun. So he fixed unto himself waxen wings. It took him up to a certain height, and then it began to melt, and he fell down and crashed to his death. So whether it is in mythology, whether it is in history, we find the same pattern, that the overweening ambitions of human beings, the mighty and megalomaniacal plan of man, are all frustrated and individuals cut down to size. And I remember reading somewhere that history is the art of reducing boisterous heroes to silent footnotes. History is the art of reducing boisterous, belligerent leaders or heroes to silent footnotes. And there is no reason for us to assume that this will not happen to President Trump. Be that as it may, as of now, how are we to read the current scenario? Clearly, Trump has succeeded in giving a jolt to the global community. There is no doubt about it. With one utterance by him, there is an earthquake resulting. So, obviously, he would now be highly euphoric. I think President Trump is discovering more and more the Richter scale intensity of the authority or the power he commands. It is 8.3 on the Richter scale as of now. You have to wait and see whether it will go up to 9.3 on the Richter. But certainly he has managed to jolt the global community. But is the war won because of that? I'm afraid not. Now I'm going to share with you something very hypothetical, something that might make you feel amused, if not amazed, something that's slightly out of the way, out of the box. I read Trump's adventure, may I say misadventure, as a war. But this war is not declared against nations. Trump, in my opinion, has declared war on the global order of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Trump has declared World War number three. You remember in his conversation with President Zelensky in the White House on that fatal Friday, he accused Zelensky of trivializing and playing with the prospects of the Third World War because he wanted to declare it himself. And Trump declared World War number three on the 2nd of April, barely a week ago. And that war has been declared on the globalized world order. Why do you think, or why do I believe that he had to do so? He had to do so. And what's the reason for it? Now, the reason, as I understand it, as follows. All of us recall that in the late 80s and early 90s of the last century, globalization was virtually thrust down the throats of the majority of nations in the world, including India. The nations of the world were manipulated and brought to a point where they had to, whether they liked it or not, they had to accept globalization, the liberalized, privatized globalization. And at that time, I remember writing an article published in the Pioneer saying that globalization is nothing but the resurgence of colonialism. It is neo-colonialism. And like in the case of the former avatar of colonialism, this is meant to further the economic advantage of the Western Hemisphere, with the United States as the leading beneficiary from this exercise. Now, if you look at the details of the globalized order, you will see this. Look at the broad pattern, for example. This globalization envisages the free movement of capital, but not the free movement of labor. Because the asset of Asia and Africa was labor power. So that labor power was not allowed to move. Only capital, money power was allowed to move. So this globalization was clearly calibrated on maximizing the benefits and advantages of America and the sidekicks of America, European nations, and the allies. And the second aspect of that globalization was that once globalization became the order of the day, the base of industry would shift to Afro-Asian nations. Therefore, the environmental crisis that industrialization precipitated would shift from America and Europe to the lesser mortals of Asia and Africa. And clearly that happened. To a large extent, this was made attractive because of the cheap labor that Africa and Asia, primarily Asia, afforded. So, it was assumed that the American and European consumers would have the benefit of the cheap labor of workers in Asia and Africa. And because the capital would be invested by these rich countries. They would be able to appropriate a large share of the new wealth generated in the process. This was the calculation. So they would have all the benefits without any of the harmful effects, and people in Africa and Asia would be left to bear the brunt of this new avatar of industrialization under the globalized order. This was the plan. What has happened? It misfired. It has clearly misfired. What has happened is that the Afro-Asian nations, particularly Asian nations, with China as the leading figure, were quick to take advantage of the new opportunities. They worked hard and they gave free expression to their genius. They unleashed their labor power, and therefore, in quick time, 30 years is not a huge period, or a huge chunk of time in the history of mankind. It is virtually like a moment. In less than 30 years, 3 decades, America emerged as a real challenge, closely followed by India, though India can't be compared to China, and countries like Vietnam, Thailand, etc., Taiwan, South Korea, a small country like Singapore, Hong Kong. Now, the situation began to change, and the American hegemony over the globe began to be seriously weakened. And American indebtedness to China has reached astronomical levels. So by now, we have reached a stage in which globalization is not working to the advantage of America. And this problem is rendered even more acute by the emerging economic and political alliance between China, Russia, possibly India, Brazil, and South Africa. This new configuration, which threatens even the global domination of the almighty dollar. And various military strategies initiated by America, regional conflicts, going back to 1991 to 1993, military intervention in the Middle East, the Iraq imbroglio, and thereafter all that has happened. They were all meant actually to preserve and perpetuate the American control over the world, and particularly to prove the inferiority of Russian armament so that the market for the Russian arms would be reduced. And to a large extent, America succeeded in this particular respect after the 1991-92 Iraq War, where the incomparable superiority of American military hardware was established. And I remember Saudi Arabia immediately placing an order worth $100 billion in 1992-93 of American hardware. And since then, of course, the American military industry has gained a lot. But all that is nothing, or is proving to be next to nothing, in relation to the astonishing, miraculous progress that China is registering. And therefore, all that President Trump and his companions are doing, put very simply, is China-centric. America has only one obsession, and that is China. That's the reason why Trump is busy cultivating President Putin, baptizing him into great, international decency, and therefore shifting the blame entirely to Zelensky as the one who initiated all the aggression. Trump cannot have enough of singing Putin's beauties, merits, goodness, etc., etc. The reason, the goal, the aim is simple. He wants to wean away Putin from Xi Jinping, from China. And Donald Trump is extremely naive, laughably naive in thinking that he will succeed in this particular aim. Putin does not trust America. Putin will never trust America. Trump can go on saying that Putin is my best friend, we are like two peas in the same pod, etc. Say what you want, but nothing will work. Russia and China will stand together for the foreseeable future, and they will constitute a new center of gravity to which many other countries are going to be attracted and are already attracted. And in fact, the grounds covered by Russia and China in this respect so far uh, is a pleasant surprise to both of them. And this has actually spread panic in Pentagon, panic in the White House, in the Oval Office, and everywhere. So Trump thinks that by unleashing this tariff war, he will be able to push China back, push China off the back of America, and put serious roadblocks in the path of China. And now, as you can see, already the confrontation has reduced itself to a simple formula. It is now America versus China. It is Trump versus Xi Jinping. It's very obvious. And that's how it is going to stay. And China is not going to back off. China cannot afford to back off, because if China backs off, it will ridicule itself. It will inflict avoidable demoralization upon itself. It would also inflict demoralization on many other countries in the world. Unfortunately or fortunately, what Trump has achieved by now is to highlight the importance of China all the more, and creating a secret desire in the minds of many leaders of the nations, particularly in Europe, or I should say including in Europe, to turn towards China. And that's not exactly good news for America or Trump. But again, this is the pattern of history. You can initiate what you want, but you can never control how it plays out. And believe you me, this tariff war that Trump, in his immense wisdom, matchless wisdom, the deal maker par excellence of modern history, has initiated, will have consequences far in excess of what he has anticipated or made allowances for. And this is going to bite America hard. This is going to bite the Republican Party hard. It may or may not bite Trump, because if the whole agenda collapses, he can wash his hands off and go and play his golf wherever he wants. But Americans will be left holding this unwanted baby for a long time to come. This is going to hang around their necks like the proverbial albatross. So the net outcome of this misguided Trumpian adventure, to the extent that I can read today, is that it will give a further boost to the rising, booming, and emerging global preeminence of China. And China has a culture and therefore a strategy of playing its cards close to its chest. And therefore, the world as yet does not know the real power that China has become. And I think an early hint, a very mild hint, was given by a small American startup company revealing DeepSeek, which rattled the artificial intelligence circles of the United States of America. And one company alone suffered a loss of $500 billion. It sent shockwaves. One small startup company, less than 2 years old. That's only an early warning shot. We are going to witness much, much more. Therefore, predictably, the Chinese response to the Trumpian adventure is, we will now hit you with 50%. We can't care two hoots as to what you would. Trump is, of course, as typical of him trying to browbeat, blackmail, threaten, bluster China into conformity to his patterns. But China says nothing of the sort. We will fight it to the finish, and they mean what they say. They mean what they say, and therefore it's bad news for the rest of the world, because in this battle between titans, the real victims will be the poor, powerless, weak, anemic peoples all over the world. This could plunge the global community into a terrible recession, and when any economic disarray takes place, the evil consequence of it hits not the rich and the powerful. They are insulated, they are protected. The terrible burden will fall upon the poor people of the world who already have their backs to the wall. In many regions of the world, we are going to witness human suffering to an unprecedented extent. And if the great mansion of American greatness is to be established on the foundation of human misery globally, then so be it. But I can tell you one thing: Americans will not be left smiling hereafter. They will become a globally hated people, which they already are to an extent, but the global hatred and contempt for America will multiply several fold. And I say this upfront, incurring personal risk, in the vain hope or in the slender hope, besieged hope, that somebody in America would heed this cry of mine and pull back from the brink while there is still time, and I believe that there is time yet. But this window of opportunity will not last long. But given the vanity of Trump, it's extremely unlikely that anyone in his party or anyone who matters in the United States and the officialdom of America would have the guts to tell him that he's courting disaster both for himself, his party, and his country. America may not become great again. America could well become the laughing stock of the world. I hope it doesn't happen that way. It will not be good news for any one of us. But what are we to do if leaders of nations lack wisdom and a sense of larger accountability, and they think they can play God to the global community, which is bound to be a misadventure with assured disastrous consequences, the exact size and scope of which is hard to predict, but it is there and is shortly coming. And therefore, I feel sorry for the people of the United States of America. God save America.